Amazing. These pilot projects are so important to get some early data on, is this working? Is this the direction we want to go on a bigger scale? What kind of results are you looking for in, let's say, these several pilot projects that you mentioned? What do you want to see at the end of that in order to take the next step, which might be a bigger rollout?
Yeah, that's a great question. For us, so it's regenerative agricultural practices, which obviously have a huge impact on your soil health, on your water, on your biodiversity. So we'll be measuring all of those areas, but probably our North Star are greenhouse gas emissions, because our raw materials are a substantial contributor to our greenhouse gas emissions. So while we might want to reduce water or improve water quality, really, as I mentioned, kind of that end goal is reducing the greenhouse gas emissions on farm to help us reduce our overall greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, so basically pilot project, and then if this is successful and the crop yields are looking good, then the fertilizer that's gone in, and then you can measure the impact on the emissions.
Absolutely, and that's just one example. We look at cover crops, we look at low till and no till, we look at different types of in our agave, we're sequestering, we're planting a native vegetation in between our agave crops, which helps sequester carbon in the soil. And so a variety of initiatives depending upon the crop, depending upon the farmers, depending upon the funding and how we can continue to move forward. But you got to start small with a few things, test them, and then we'll scale them up, whether it's 10 growers and 15 growers last year. Our goal is then obviously 30 growers and 50 growers until we get to our entire agricultural supply chain.
It's so interesting because this is, you were saying before, this is really changing the way of doing business. And actually it goes from purchasing a commodity, let's say wheat or barley, to an engineering system that you have to roll out globally. And you have to basically manage that entire system, which then, of course, changes the way that you do business.
It does. And the most important thing, though, is protecting the farmers' livelihoods. Most of these growers, if you take in, for example, corn, they have been growing corn for us in the Kentucky and Indiana region for generations. So it's about building that partnership, building those relationships. Our teams, it's a first name basis, it's a family. So how do you protect it so that they can, obviously keep the farm in generations to pass on to their family? And certainly, how do we ensure that we have really great quality corn for us for a long term as well?
Great. Maybe we can touch on transport a little bit. I'm curious how you view the transition in transport, which is, of course, a contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, especially in Scope 3. Right now, we've got the vast majority of trucks, I believe in Europe it's 98%, are diesel trucks, and a transition towards electric and renewable diesel. How do you view that change? How fast do you imagine that happening, and how does that fit into your supply chain? Also outside of road transport, maybe sea transport and other things. How do you view that transition in transport?
That's super interesting. And earlier you mentioned the word easy, and I was thinking, well, maybe easy for you. Not necessarily as easy for us. Right. So, right now, whether it's transportation, logistics, or the other areas that we were discussing, the technology is evolving and the innovation is evolving. So, when you look at sea transport, some of the new things that are coming in, going back to old, sail. How do you use sail to get from France to the United States in a way that you might not have ever foreseen, or certainly maybe not even last year, but what does that future look like? So really staying abreast of that, working really closely with our suppliers. I can't emphasize it enough, whether it's a packaging supplier, a transportation logistics supplier, or a farmer. It's that building that collaboration, building that thought partnership, leaning in, maybe investing together in technology or supporting each other in innovation and technology, and then doing business with suppliers that you want to be part of your supply chain. If they're not committed to greenhouse gas emission reductions, they're not committed to the same vision that we have, they'll probably move out of our supply chain in the long term.
Do you think that suppliers who, not just for Beam Suntory, but in general, that are really ahead of the curve or behind the curve, do you think that will differentiate the business success of those suppliers in the future? I
think so. I mean, that's what we're thinking as our own company and looking at our stakeholders. So if you're a supplier doing business with companies that are thinking that way, I think it will definitely impact your business. But it might not just be, the business aspect. The regulatory landscape has changed more so than I've ever seen in, the many years that I've been involved in sustainability. What we're seeing coming out of the EU, with the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, If you're a company, you might be taking a step back saying, well, we're in the US and it's not going to impact us. It is going to impact you if you are doing business in the EU. And so getting ready for that regulatory change, actually disclosing your environmental and your social and governance factors, just like you do your financial reporting, which means assurance and reports that will be in the public domain, that's really going to probably expedite what's happening just globally. The sheer volume of companies that will be reporting, whether in the next couple years or up through 2029, is astronomical. It's going to have a sizable impact on how business gets done.
And allow us to all choose our own suppliers where we say, look, these are the ones that are doing, everyone's doing their reporting. Now we have visibility. Now we have transparency. We can make our choices there. We've got also the Inflation Reduction Act here in the US. And in Germany, there's actually a change to the road tolls for heavy-duty vehicles, which is going to significantly increase the cost of running on diesel, whereas electric and hydrogen trucks are exempt through the end of 2025. So you've basically got 2 years without road tolls. I imagine we're going to start to see even more and more of that also in the US and other environments as well. I agree with you. We've seen so much regulatory change in such a short period of time. It's amazing to see.
It's amazing. We practically have a team that not their entire job, but a good portion of their job is just maintaining, watching, and monitoring regulatory change. Because the EU carbon tax, that's going to be very interesting to see the implications from there. And then when you think about it, just taking a step back, packaging. Whether you are the state of Washington or you are the UK or the EU or Singapore or Canada or the list is endless. It just keeps coming, and it's different in each region and in each state or in each country. So making sure you can monitor, maintain, and make those changes. A packaging change takes a while for products like ours that are on the shelf for a long time. So hopefully not too long, but can have long-term shelf availability. Yep. So how do you actually look for the future and be able to keep up with the regulatory frameworks?